Welcome back. Today we have the NIO deliveries out, so the sales numbers always highly anticipated. And let me first talk you through these numbers and then tell you more of how I see them in the context of competition and also explaining some more context around these numbers. So let me use the table here by CNEV Post, and you possibly already saw that NIO has delivered close to 10,000 vehicles. And as always, the numbers here are getting compared to XPEV and Li Auto, which makes increasingly less sense in my point of view, but more on that later. But first of all, for NIO, we can see the month-on-month trend is down a little bit, minus 8% in comparison. For XPEV, it's actually down 20% month-on-month, and for Li Auto, also down a little bit, minus 13%. This is quite usual. It is the weakest season in automotive business. Usually we see this gradual rise throughout the year, and so it is expected that at least the first 3 months in the year are actually lower than the last quarter of the year. Now, the authors in the articles rightfully warn here that the positioning should not be forgotten about these comparisons, because we kind of tend to put XPEV, Li Auto and NIO in the same basket, which frankly, and I repeat myself here on the channel, doesn't make too much sense because they're operating in different markets, different target customers. Li Auto not even being a pure EV play, so it's just a smaller battery with a range extender. So that's an entirely different business, and also for XPEV, a much lower average sales price than what NIO is doing. So competing in a very different market, having different goals. And so it's making increasingly less sense to put these numbers actually together in order to get a perspective. And there are quite different investment cases too. Speaking of that, Felix Finance has also just pointed out in his video this morning that when it comes to investing, people are looking at free cash flows, at profit margins, at profits, and so on.
Are they making per car? What's the gross margin per car? Well, NIO makes 79,000, which is around about 10,000 US, and XPEV only makes about 4,500 US, which is 29,000 RMB. Now, NIO got 9,652 deliveries. That means 762 million renminbi, and that in US dollars is approximately 114 million US dollars. And that's a fairly nice number. I should make that a US dollar. I'll do that in a second. And not that you can see it because I'm blocking it, but here we go. And how many cars would XPEV need to sell to achieve the same gross margin? 15,000? Nope, it's too little. 20,000? Nope. 25,000? A little bit more, maybe 26,000. Yeah, so about 26,000 vehicles is what XPEV would need to deliver to achieve the same amount of gross profit, to be able to get to eventually a net profit level that's the same as NIO. So you're not comparing apples with apples, you're comparing apples with oranges, and very, very cheap apples and very expensive oranges. So it's super important to realize this difference here. It's not the same thing.
So instead, let's bring up the real comparison, and this is NIO versus the German OEMs, because this is how the company is strategically positioned and played out. Again, repeating myself, NIO has established this unique positioning as a Chinese company, getting a foothold in the quality production of premium to luxury cars. And here's a comparison of NIO and how it scaled from Q1 2020 to Q4 2021. These numbers are kind of incomplete, so I'm not trying to leave anything out there. If you have better numbers, let me know. It's kind of hard to find these numbers actually, but what you see are the sales in red for the Audi e-tron, so actually different models that are selling in China. Then for Mercedes, the EQC, which is their flagship, which they have just been selling, and the BMW iX3 compared to all of the NIO sales combined. And you can see here that NIO is outselling the German OEMs combined, all of them in the area of premium to luxury EVs in China currently. But, well, we need to note here that BMW is kind of catching up here. It seems to be the real competitor at this point in time for NIO, while actually I would say the biggest competition in the long run for NIO should be Audi, because this is how I see NIO actually positioned in the market more than BMW. maybe with the ET7 they are getting more into the ranges of what BMW buyers are usually opting for. And so while NIO is doing really well in their field and comparison to competitors, we of course have to note that yes, it's been going a little bit more flat here, and also this competition is kind of coming up. Unfortunately, I don't have the data on the unit sales for some of these models. It even starts for Audi in December. I don't have the data anymore, but as soon as it's getting reported and I have it, I will update my charts. But this giving you a first impression of who is the real competition for NIO and how does it compare. So let's have a quick deeper look at this competitor of NIO. And there is actually a WeChat article with the headline BBA Budong Nianjingren. And that's literally translating into Mercedes, BMW and Audi don't get young people in China. And speaking of how their products that they have in the market are currently not really very competitive and kind of lacking the requirements and aspirations of the Chinese new users. And that's also getting a little bit more clear if we have a look at, for example, the BMW iX3, which is doing quite well in the sales benchmark that I've just shown, but looking just at the cockpit, how cluttered it is with this kind of legacy layout of the knobs and stuff like that, you can definitely see that this is not one of the latest platforms, and also that this is kind of built on an old infrastructure and architecture that is now just being remodeled as an electric car. Still, of course, it's doing well in terms of sales, as I have pointed out, no matter if you like the design or not, or BMW as a brand. But you also had to acknowledge that they have had to cut the price by $10,000 because Tesla and the Chinese startups are putting so much heat at these models in order to sell well. And so, for example, if you're looking here at the cost comparison, and that's the BMW iX3 here, it's selling for comparably less than, for example, the Waylay, so the NIO ES8. That is still on average a more expensive car. And why are there people in large numbers that are willing to pay a premium on top of a BMW? Well, it's because of those different advantages that a NIO has in comparison. For example, a built-out infrastructure, not to speak only of the battery swapping, but also the charging infrastructure. To my knowledge, BMW doesn't have its own infrastructure in China. Then next, of course, the interior, the exterior, the vehicle platform. Even if NIO's platform is already quite old and now they're coming out with the latest one, the BMW ones, as shown here, is certainly also not top-notch yet. And then, of course, also the cars these days are about the software capabilities. So the NIOs can do firmware over-the-air updates, which the BMW cannot do. And then, of course, regarding the car driving experience, there are things like the assistant driving, which are more developed on the NIO side than currently with BMW. And so currently, even with those older models of NIO, these are the advantages that they can play in comparison to their competitors here, the real competitors like Audi, Mercedes, and even BMW, which is doing here comparably well. But we always need to be careful also about the fact that these companies are operating through those dealership structures. So we don't really know yet how many of these cars that have been registered are actually with dealers and pushed through this sales network, whereas of course NIO is going straight to customer via online marketing only, as well as their offline self-owned NIO houses, as well as the NIO spaces. So that's quite a difference there. Furthermore, it seems that this car by BMW also has some issues regarding recalls necessary because of some manufacturing issues. We've seen the same currently with the Mercedes EQC in China. And so generally the topic here seems that it's not so easy to transition to EVs despite all of the efforts and all of the R&D invested. And what should now be coming into play in 2022 is very important now that NIO will bring out a new vehicle platform which will be more efficient, not only on the manufacturing side, so better margins, but also regarding the technology, so drivetrain efficiencies and things like that. The new models, the new sedans that are coming out, so greatly also improving the offering that NIO will have, as well as, of course, the global expansion there, while most of these competitors here, like BMW and Audi and so on, they may get a facelift of these EVs that are currently having here in the market. But until they come out with the actual platform, it will take at least till 2024, 2025, it seems, that's according to the timelines and schedules that the manufacturers have published before. And so coming back to NIO January sales, let's also speak about some factors and implications that I think have paid into the January numbers here. First of all, I've heard rumors that this may be actually connected to the subsidies that have been taken away by the Chinese government, but I think this is not the case. All of the Chinese players like XPEV, Li Auto and NIO, they have full order books according to their managements and basically are delivering everything they can. Right now there are rather the implications like now with Chinese New Year, as well as overall maybe manufacturing constraints on some of those players there. For NIO specifically, I think it sounds a lot currently that they're still in the single shift, so meaning they have a capacity, an annualized capacity of 120,000 annual capacity. Of course, they have done the renovations, first of all, to get to that capacity, but second of all, they could now also do a second shift, which I believe they haven't done so yet. So basically the second shift would double their annual capacity to 240,000. But that's just my assumption here, that they haven't ramped that one up now, because of course they know Q1 will be kind of from the demand side and also with the vacations, with Chinese New Year, the time where they couldn't max this one out, and that would mean an increased cost structure with the double shift. And rather possibly I think that the goal here might be to have the single shift fully occupied, and that would relate to those 10,000 vehicles roughly monthly. And at the same time using some of these idle capacities that this current factory still has in order to start with the ET7, doing the pre-production, the production for the show cars, the ramp of the production, because the first deliveries are expected by the end of March, which possibly take kind of place then as a double shift in this current factory. And then I think NIO Park, so the new NIO factory, might actually start by the end of Q1, Q2 to be starting with the tooling and installations of all of the manufacturing lines, and possibly trying to tweak and ramp the ET5 production there. So in the new factory, so that the old factory wouldn't be affected. That is how I personally am looking at things. I don't know their plans actually, but this would kind of make sense. And so I think by the time of April and going forward, we will then finally see actually, first of all, the double shift making its impact from the old factory, so notably going above the 10,000 monthly deliveries just from that factory. Plus then at some point the second factory kicking in, and so we'll get to this bigger trajectory, I think, only by the end of 2022. And so coming back to this chart, I would say in the next quarter and maybe even the next 2 quarters, we may just see some more slight increases here until we'll finally go more into the higher growth rates here, also on the quarterly rates that are increasing in Q3 and Q4 based on these manufacturing plans and vehicle plans. And then it will be interesting to see how they actually compare to still a BMW, Mercedes and Audi. And again, not so much a Li Auto or XPEV there. So I hope you find this insightful. Let me know your comments down below. Thank you guys for watching and see you in the next video.